You don't need chains anymore, just Wi-Fi, a full battery, a screen that never stops feeding you. You were told freedom means doing what you want, but no one told you that desire could be manufactured, that craving could be programmed, that addiction could feel like peace. So you chase pleasure, you scroll, you snack, you swipe, you stream, you drown, and somewhere along the way you stopped asking real questions. Because why suffer when you can be entertained? Why reflect when you can escape? Why rebel when you're comfortable? Huxley warned us. He said the future wouldn't come with bullets and boots. It would come with bliss, with comfort, with pleasure, and we'd walk into it smiling, calling it freedom. Every time you're uncomfortable, you reach for something. Music, sugar, a podcast, a scroll through strangers' lives, a screen that helps you forget. You don't even notice you're doing it anymore because it's automatic, like a reflex. Your nervous system hits discomfort and you sedate it instantly. And the culture applauds this. Do what feels good. Follow your bliss. You deserve to be happy. But Huxley would ask, at what cost? You've been taught that happiness is the goal, but no one told you that chasing happiness constantly would make you weaker, not stronger. Because when you're always chasing stimulation, you never develop stamina. You never build inner silence. You never learn to sit in your own presence. You just run from boredom, from stillness, from yourself. You're not weak because you can't focus. You're not broken because you can't read a book or sit still or stop scrolling. Your system is fried. You're in a constant loop of dopamine spikes and crashes, and the world is designed to keep you there. This isn't a glitch, it's a business model. Companies don't want you present, they want you hooked. They want you desperate for the next hit of pleasure, the next sale, the next video, the next short, the next high, because a distracted mind is a controllable one. Huxley saw this. He said the population wouldn't need to be oppressed. They'd be too busy numbing themselves to even notice. And that's exactly what's happening. You're not too tired to live fully. You're just never alone long enough to hear what your soul actually needs. There used to be a time when silence meant thinking, when boredom led to creation. Now, silence is unbearable. You panic when the Wi-Fi drops. You reach for your phone before you open your eyes. You feel restless without noise, because without it, you'd have to face something terrifying, your inner world, and you've been trained to avoid that at all costs. Because once you start to feel again, really feel, you'd remember how hollow this all is. The scrolling, the binging, the endless pursuit of feeling good. You'd see the machinery behind it, and you'd want out, but they can't afford that. So they keep feeding you just enough stimulation to keep you quiet. You think you're relaxing, but you're being conditioned. When Huxley wrote Brave New World, people thought he was being extreme. A society where people are bred for roles, distracted by sex, pleasure, and synthetic joy. Impossible. But look around. You are no longer governed by tyranny. You're governed by convenience. You don't fight injustice because you're too busy curating your feed. You don't ask big questions because your brain is juggling too many small ones. You don't rebel because comfort is cheap, fast, and always within reach. This is how you enslave a generation. You don't put them in cages. You put them in cycles of self-soothing that feel empowering but are really pacifying. You give them endless choice, and none of it leads to truth. You make them feel like they're free, but they're just full and numb. What does freedom mean to you? Doing what you want, going where you want, saying what you want. But what if you've never wanted anything real? What if your wants were handed to you, curated by marketers, shaped by algorithms, designed by people who profit from your dissatisfaction? You weren't born wanting likes. You weren't born needing validation. You weren't born chasing artificial highs. That was given to you, and now it runs your life. You call it autonomy, but it's addiction, because you're not choosing pleasure. Pleasure is choosing you. This isn't about rejecting pleasure. Huxley wasn't a monk. He didn't say pleasure would ruin you. He said worshipping it would. When pleasure becomes your compass, you stop choosing based on truth. You choose based on relief. Relief from discomfort. Relief from emptiness. Relief from thinking too hard about who you are and what this life is for. And if you do that long enough, you lose your ability to discern. You stop asking, is this good for me? Is this helping me grow? Is this worth my time? And you start asking, does this feel good? Is it easy? Does it distract me? That's how you decay, slowly, silently, while thinking you're living well, because every hit of pleasure feels like a win, until you wake up 10 years later wondering where your life went. So what happens when you stop chasing stimulation? What happens when the silence catches up? In the next part, we go deeper. The psychological damage of overstimulation, why your nervous system feels like it's failing, and how breaking the pleasure loop is the first real act of rebellion. You think there's something wrong with you. You forget things. You can't sit still. You can't read like you used to. You can't focus on one task for more than a few minutes. But your brain isn't failing. It's flooded. Every notification, every headline, every advertisement, every reel, they're not just information, they're stimulation. Mini dopamine bombs designed to hijack your attention. And when your brain is flooded for long enough, it stops trusting stillness. Stillness becomes unfamiliar, then uncomfortable, then unbearable. So you fill the gaps. Even your rest is noisy. Even your peace is synthetic. You think you're relaxing, but really, you're just numbing the exhaustion caused by the stimulation you can't stop feeding. And that's exactly what Huxley feared. A culture so overstimulated, it loses the ability to feel anything real. Think about it. What's harder to control? A hungry man or a man who's just full enough to stay quiet? Tyrants of the past ruled by fear, but fear breeds resistance. So modern systems don't use fear, they use pleasure, comfort, entertainment, convenience. Keep people mildly satisfied, and they'll never question who's holding the leash. And that leash isn't external anymore. It's internal. It's the urge to check, to swipe, to consume, to escape. The leash is made of your own cravings. You don't need a prison guard. You need a push notification. That's enough to keep you obedient, not to a person, but to a system that wants your life force diluted into endless, profitable clicks. And the scariest part? You keep calling it freedom. Who are you beneath the noise? When you strip away the entertainment, the consumption, the loops of craving, who's left? Most people don't know, because they've never sat long enough in the silence to find out. Their identity is borrowed. From aesthetics, from influencers, from algorithms, from dopamine. They've constructed a personality around what feels good, not what's true. And every time the silence gets too loud, they reach for the same thing, something that makes them feel, not something that grounds them, not something that wakes them up, just something that sedates the panic of not knowing who they are. But you can't find yourself through stimulation. You find yourself through subtraction, and that's the one thing this system will never encourage you to do. You're terrified of boredom, but boredom isn't bad. It's a signal. It's your mind asking for depth, for focus, for clarity, for something real. But you treat it like a disease. You medicate it instantly with a hit of noise. But what if you didn't? What if you sat in the boredom and listened? You'd hear things that hurt, things you've buried, things you've been too busy to feel, and underneath that, vision, direction, desire that wasn't shaped by trends, but by your soul. Boredom is the furnace. It's where all your fake desires burn off. It's where your real self begins to speak, but you'll never hear it if you keep filling every second with stimulation. Pleasure looks beautiful on the surface, but unchecked pleasure doesn't awaken you. It sedates you. It turns real life into a dull background track. Conversations feel slower, books feel boring, nature feels quiet, reality feels empty, because your brain is used to constant novelty, constant rush, constant escape. So now, you can't sit with real people because they don't cut fast enough. You can't sit with real problem because they don't resolve in 30 seconds. You can't sit with real joy because it's quieter than the hits you're used to. This is how pleasure robs you, not with drama, with dullness. It makes life feel too slow, so you stay in the loop. And eventually, you can't even remember what being alive used to feel like. You've been told pain is a problem, that it must be healed, hidden, avoided. But pain isn't the enemy. Pain is information. It tells you what matters. It tells you where you're misaligned. It tells you where your attention is needed. But if you numb pain with pleasure, you numb everything. You lose your compass, your hunger for meaning, your rage against stagnation, your desire to build something instead of just consume. You weren't meant to be anesthetized. You were meant to feel, to burn, to wake up, to rebel against the loop. But if you kill the pain too early, you kill the fire with it. And no system wants you burning. They want you pacified. And every hit of pleasure you don't question helps them do it. If the silence scares you, good. It means your real self is waking up. In the next part, we go deeper. How to detox from pleasure addiction, how to rebuild your nervous system, and how to face your life without sedation and without fear. If you want to take your life back, you're going to suffer, not because suffering is noble, but because withdrawal hurts. And make no mistake, this is withdrawal. You're not just quitting a habit, you're breaking a spell. You've built an entire identity around feeling good, and now you're choosing clarity instead. So expect the crash. You'll feel bored, anxious, irritated. Your mind will scream for distraction. Your body will crave the next hit of ease. That's not failure. That's detox. That's the nervous system learning to regulate without chemical comfort. And every time you resist that old impulse to scroll, to numb, to escape, you reclaim a piece of yourself, not the curated version, the real one. Your attention is sacred. It's the fuel for everything you are and everything you become. What you focus on is your life, but you've been giving it away for free to corporations, to algorithms, to people who sell novelty and call it meaning. You want your life back? Start here. Guard your attention like your soul depends on it, because it does. Delete the app. Turn off the noise. Sit in a room without input. Watch how desperate your mind becomes, and stay. Let the itch grow. Let the discomfort speak. Don't run, because underneath the chaos is consciousness, and underneath the noise is you. Stillness used to scare you. You thought it was boring, pointless, a waste of time. But that's only because you were addicted to movement, to doing, to consuming, to chasing. You were scared of sitting still because you were scared of what might rise. But now you know, stillness is where truth begins. It's where you remember what matters, where you hear the subtle wisdom your dopamine-drunk brain always talks over, where you meet the version of you that's not online, not optimized, not performing, just present, still, and awake. Huxley didn't say we should suffer for the sake of it. He said we should stop running from reality, and reality lives in the quiet. You think you want pleasure, but what you really want is meaning. You think you want more freedom, but what you really want is a reason to use it. The pleasure loop is empty because it never builds anything. It just feeds itself, and then it asks for more, and then more, and then more. And every time you give in, your soul shrinks a little further. Not because pleasure is bad, but because it replaces what you actually need: a vision, a mission, a challenge, a reason to wake up. Without purpose, you become dependent on stimulation to feel alive. With purpose, you don't need to feel good. You just need to go. You think discipline is restriction, but in a culture addicted to comfort, discipline is rebellion. Saying no to dopamine is a threat. Choosing depth over distraction is a revolution. Sitting with your thoughts without sedating them is an act of war against the system that wants you docile. You think you need motivation, but what you need is practice. No one's coming to save you. No one's going to pull you out of the loop. If you want to break free, you'll have to walk through boredom, through discomfort, through the awkward silence of not being sedated. And on the other side isn't bliss. It's you, grounded, focused, unshakable. That's discipline, not punishment, power. Feeling good isn't the goal. Being whole is. You were never meant to be permanently happy. You were meant to feel everything: joy, grief, frustration, love, anger, stillness, silence. Pleasure is a season, not a state. And when you cling to it, you stop yourself from maturing. You become a child in an adult body, needing constant stimulation, afraid of depth, terrified of sitting still. That's not life, that's sedation. You weren't made to chase constant pleasure. You were made to carry consciousness, to stand still, to face the mirror, to become someone who feels deeply and acts clearly. That's the real awakening Huxley hoped we'd choose. You've tried sedation, you've tried stimulation. Now it's time to try stillness. In the final part, we'll go all the way. How to build an anti-dopamine life, how to reconnect with purpose, and how to become the one thing this pleasure-addicted world can't control: a fully awake human being. If you constantly need to escape your life, it's not a life, it's a trap. And pleasure isn't saving you, it's sedating you just enough to stay quiet. So ask yourself, what would a life look like that you don't need to run from? Where your mornings aren't numb, where your afternoons aren't desperate for a hit, where your evenings aren't filled with endless scrolling just to survive the emptiness. You think you need more pleasure, but maybe you just need more honesty. Maybe your job is draining you. Maybe your relationships are fake. Maybe your habits are hollow. And maybe you've known that for a long time, but pleasure made it easier to avoid. So now, no more hiding. Build a life that doesn't require constant anesthesia. Build a life that makes presence feel like home. Every time discomfort rises, you've been taught to run, to fix it, to numb it, to cure it with content, sugar, noise, ease. But what if discomfort isn't an interruption? What if it's a message? Pain says, you're out of alignment. Frustration says, you've outgrown this. Restlessness says, you're under-challenged. Discomfort isn't a bug in the system. It is the system. It's how your soul speaks. So stop silencing it. Let it rise. Let it teach. Let it break whatever needs to be broken so something true can be built. You don't need to be comforted. You need to be confronted. That's how you grow. And growth is the one thing pleasure can't give you. You have to earn it. You want to break the loop? Here's how. Do nothing. Not forever. Not even for long. But long enough to hear yourself again. Sit in a room with no music, no screen, no input. Feel the pull to escape. Resist it. Let boredom roar. Let your brain panic. Let your body twitch. Let every shallow craving rise to the surface and burn off. And when the storm passes, you'll find something underneath it. Stillness, presence, signal. You'll feel hunger again. Not for junk stimulation, but for real movement, real creation, real living. And that shift, it's the beginning of freedom, not the cheap kind, the kind that roots you in reality, uncomfortable, unshakable, alive. This isn't about quitting everything, it's about designing deliberately. Use your phone, don't let it use you. Watch something beautiful, not something that drains you. Eat for energy, not escape. Speak only when it's real, not when it's reactive. Every part of your life is either sharpening you or sedating you. Choose the sharp edges. Choose the habits that ground you, the people who challenge you, the silence that reminds you who you are. And above all, choose systems over spikes, rituals, routines, practices that root you in the real, because the real world is where freedom lives, and no amount of pleasure will save you from the consequences of avoiding it. Stop chasing better feelings, start choosing better actions. You don't need another motivational video, another productivity hack, another dopamine detox with no depth behind it. You need to remember, you are not your cravings. You are not your feed. You are not your comfort. You are the one who watches it all. And that watcher, that's your power. So stop waiting to feel like it. Start living like it. Say no when it's easier to nod. Turn off the noise when it's easier to scroll. Be still when every part of you wants to move. That's how you earn your mind back, and with it, your life. If you've made it this far, it means something in you is done. Done performing clarity. Done pretending pleasure is enough. Done living like sedation is freedom. And now, you have a choice. You can go back to comfort, to distraction, to noise, or you can stop running. You can sit in the silence. You can feel the ache, you can face the mirror, and on the other side of that mirror isn't someone who feels good all the time. It's someone who's finally free, grounded, rooted, real, because the world doesn't need more people who are constantly entertained. It needs people who are fully awake. If you found this video helpful, give it a like so it can reach more people in need. And if you're done numbing and ready to rebuild your life from truth, subscribe. No fluff. No fake healing, just depth. Until next time, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.